Hello, everyone. This is Jacob Popio, the producer of The Apex. Today, we are interviewing Mr. Markees Watkins. We dive into Markees's path to becoming a boxing trainer. We go into the inner workings of the boxer's mentality. Lastly, we dive into Jan's journey to the Golden Gloves finals. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex. Welcome to JJD Thoughts Podcast number 5. I'd like to introduce our host.
I'm your host, John Almasy, and today I'd like to open the podcast with a poem that actually hangs right above my door. And I read it every morning. I'll try to if I don't wake up late and I'm chugging my coffee on the way to wherever I'm going. But it's a poem by Rudyard Kipling called If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, and if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating, yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, and if you can think, but not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with both triumph and disaster, and treat both of those impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth that you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things that you've given your life to broken, and stoop to build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all of your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at new beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except for the will that says, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, but never lose the common touch, if neither your foes nor your loving friends can hurt you, and if all men can count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of a distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. So I try to read that poem every morning because I really think that it encompasses a lot of lessons that are hard to learn. They're hard to kind of grasp, but they come with experience. And so today I have with me my boxing trainer. So to intro that, I'm going to read kind of a stereotypical piece that everybody kind of knows. We'll see if you can guess what it is before I announce what it is at the end. So let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying that you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that. And that ain't you. You're better than that. Rocky Balboa. All right, so like I said, today I have my boxing trainer here with me, one of the owners and operators of Canton Boxing Gym, Akeem Watkins, also known by his loving friends as Markees. So Markees, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I kind of I start out pretty much every episode with just, hey, like, where'd you grow up? What kind of led you to where you are now?
Well, I grew up in both Canton and Massillon. My mom's from Massillon. My dad's from Canton. They met, married. We lived in Canton. There, they divorced and, pretty much grew up in a custody battle where we lived with my dad in Canton and lived with my mom in Massillon. And most of our childhood memories were from Massillon. And, our grandparents on my mom's side was kind of our safe haven, who also lived in Massillon. So That's where we mainly grew up. We spent time in both Canton and Massillon.
Okay. And so you went to high school in Massillon, right?
Yeah, I went to high school in Massillon, middle school at Crenshaw and Canton, a little bit of elementary school in Canton at Madjuts, a little bit of Jackson, Massillon, not Massillon, York and Massillon, and
Because you kind of just ran the gambit
Madjuts.
pretty much everywhere around, huh?
Right.
So we talked all the time about just different types of athletics and things that kind of get people into boxing. So, when I was in high school, I was a wrestler, a crappy football player, and a tennis player. But you were not a crappy football player when you were in high school. So
from what I hear, I wasn't.
From what you hear, yeah. But there was a huge team dynamic because Massillon McKinley has always been a huge thing. And for those of you that don't know, Massillon and McKinley are two rivalry high schools in the state of Ohio, and it's a huge deal every time they play each other.
It used to be pro teams back in the day. That's kind of why it's so big.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was that team dynamic like for Massillon football in that era that you were in? Because you guys were dominators at that point in time.
When I was at Massillon, we never lost to McKinley. We played them 5 times, never lost to them. It didn't mean as much to me as it did for my teammates because a lot of the guys on the McKinley side were either cousins or cats I grew up with or cats that were, former teammates when I went to Crenshaw, et cetera. So
yeah, because you kind of been all around.
So, everybody else is mean mugging. I'm shaking hands because that guy used to be my teammate and brother too.
Right.
But, the experience, it's a televised game. It's bet on in Vegas. It's a pretty high platform. Growing up in Massillon and Canton and playing at that level, was already ready for college.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, man, I'm at college. This is different. Those high schools, their programs are better than a lot of colleges. So it really sets the stage and puts you in a good spot.
Right. And that just being able to perform at that level kind of forces you to, you have to enact discipline really early on, be really dedicated in the weight room, and it becomes a lifestyle more so than just playing a game.
Yeah.
Right. Because the stage is so big.
Right.
So how did you end up getting into music? Because I know that that's something that we've talked about too, where I actually just last week we were talking about Freddie and about how he was just like the little guy and everything else, but he was super into music.
Yeah.
And kind of brought that was another avenue that brought people together.
Right.
Totally outside of athletics, totally outside of the typical manly things that, guys are doing in high schools.
Right.
Was this music piece.
Yeah.
So for a high profile football player to be super involved in the music side of the house, what was that experience like?
It was a little different. Because it's also another dynamic as a football player. You don't get really taken seriously when you get into music.
Yeah, that's how I felt as a tennis player.
Yeah, when you're looking at discographies and wanting to discover new music, are you really considering Shaq?
Right.
You know what I mean? People think that's a joke, but Shaq actually had some pretty dope music. It wasn't all gems, but he had some in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was kind of that dynamic, but it was the fact that nobody was doing what we were doing in high school. The fact that we had this album that involved many other people within the school that people also didn't know do music. We printed up, I'd say, 200 copies of our CD, and it sold out in 3 days.
Gee.
So we had to order some more and all of that stuff. But it was maybe 12 people on that album, and at least 7 were aggressively selling these CDs. So
it is just people that you would never expect to be kind of involved in the music and stuff like that.
And just walking to school and hearing people you've never seen before driving down the street playing your stuff. It was pretty good. Whether it was good or not, it was a good support. And as far as getting into music, my mom, she was a singer, and she sung background and had opportunities to perform with Gerald Levert and performed on Comic View and stuff like that.
Right.
My dad's side, there was quite a few musicians over there, so it's deep within us. The one that more so came out of left field was the boxing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that's a perfect kind of transition into our next little section will be. So you started boxing right, as an amateur fighter.
Yeah.
So why don't you just walk us through the journey from the initiating, boxing and stuff like that, to the point where you get to, I want to have this dream of owning a gym and training.
Right.
Because if it were up to you, you'd probably still be in the ring at some point. But through different injuries and some other things, right?
Right. Right.
Training is definitely where I think you found your niche.
Right.
But it takes people a long time, I think, to figure out what that niche is.
Right.
And you just happen to be in it now. But how did you get there?
Well, got there. First, I did not want to play football. I did not want to play it. I wasn't familiar with it, etc. That came from my grandpa working security at the Massillon High School games and seeing a live tiger running around and all of that stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I wanted to box.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't available,
Right.
As a kid. Nobody knew where to find it. It's not like now you got social media. You can just type in boxing in Google and get it. Heck, there wasn't even internet back then.
You message somebody on Facebook, and next thing you know, you're fighting in the Golden Gloves.
Exactly. So it wasn't like that then, but that's what I wanted to do. So what happened is I wanted contact of some sort and ended up being in football. But the whole time I wanted boxing. So my brother ended up finding a gym. He was actually the initiator, and I'm a family first kind of person. So whenever somebody finds something they're trying to get into, I'm behind him. So he found a gym in Akron called Good Shepherd. He was there for a while. I ended up being so happy and supportive of it that I bought all of his gear for him, his headgear, trunks, all of that stuff, completely supportive. And I actually was a trainer before I was a boxer because I've always been into sports. When my mom would go to the monument and run, I remember being 8 years old and not playing in the grass like the other kids were. I was running the steps with her. The hard work aspect, it was never a problem.
Just been hardcore since you were a young kid.
Right. Seeing my mom doing it, I thought it was cool, so I went after it,
Right.
So
that explains how you can be so demonic when you're coming up with workouts. You've
Exactly.
been doing it since you were 6.
Exactly. So, that was the transition. And I remember working with my brother on the mitts and running over scenarios. And out of frustration, he ended up telling me the best piece of information as a fighter trainer that I could ever get. He says, you really can't tell me what to do because you've never been in the ring. Mm-hmm. It's not the same from a spectator's point of view as it is from somebody that's actually in there.
Right.
So even as a cornerman now, as a person that's been in the ring, I'm still not seeing what it is that you're seeing.
Right.
Just like you're not seeing what I'm seeing. So it's a mutual agreement and togetherness that you have with boxing. I have to trust you and you have to trust me.
Agreed.
And in that 1 minute between rounds, we have to combine our notes and come up with a new strategy to complete going forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
moving into the next round.
Right. So once he said that, I, with no training of my own, signed up to fight in the Golden Gloves maybe a month later. Fought like a tiger, but got whooped on.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's the beautiful thing about boxing. I think it's kind of the great equalizer. You have people where it's just like, oh yeah, no, I can get into a ring, and then, like you said, you can fight like all get out and still get whooped on.
Right. I gave it every ounce of me. Almost everything I did was illegal. I didn't know that, but I was fighting, and the guy I was fighting, we were the same age, but he had been fighting and training since he was 16, and it just so happened to be his first fight. But he was training for maybe, 10 years.
Nice.
And so I had to go
that
up
definitely
against that.
gives somebody an upper hand.
Exactly. So, my first fight I didn't even have a trainer, and after that I took it more seriously.
Do you have a cornerman or anything? Like, was Montel your cornerman or what?
Well, then you couldn't be a fighter and somebody's and train somebody. You had to have a trainer's book, which is still the case now, which you can at least be in a corner with a book now.
Right.
But I had Rick Noggle out of Massillon. He and Elder Jerry Evans, who's a pastor in Massillon, he had boxing equipment in his basement of his church and all of that stuff. And we pretty much got together on Tuesdays and Thursdays to spar. But
Gotcha.
There was no training involved. We just sparred. Nobody really knew what they were doing outside of 2 people, which was my brother and another guy named Joe. So after that, I got with Charles Quincy. He showed me some things. Then that's when I got with my now mentor and godfather through my wife, Lorenzo Scott, and the rest is history as far as the knowledge and all of that.
Yeah, so I'm going to back up for just a quick second. So
Okay.
what was it, that realization, right? Because, boxing, I think, is, you can compare boxing to life really easily,
Yes.
right? I mean, obviously, the quote that I read from Rocky kind of compares it to life, where life is going to punch you in the face at some point. It's just, what do you do when that happens? So you went into that fight with no training, gave it your hardest, and got whooped on. So what was it? What was that emotion like after that fight, and how did that kind of roll into what you decided to do moving forward?
Well, it made me, what my brother told me was absolutely correct. Everything I was telling him to do, I was trying to do myself, and I couldn't. I had no legs. I had no confidence, had no skill, etc. But I still had will. So even though I was horrible, I still put on one of the best fights of the evening because I wasn't going to stop.
Yeah, you had heart.
Exactly. So everybody knew I wasn't going to stop. The guy I was fighting really knew I wasn't going to stop. He hit me with everything he had. I didn't stumble, never hit the ground. I've never hit the ground as a fighter or sparring, etc. I've been hit really hard, but never been down, because will won't allow me to fall.
Right.
And I'm just going to keep coming. And I try to pass that will forward, which is hard to do. It's hard to give will to a person that doesn't have it.
Right.
But you can at least try. But moving forward, I kept training, kept going to the same gym. It got to a point where no one was coming. I had a key to the gym. Every gym I've ever been a part of, they've given me a key because that's how much I would come. Not only to train, but to help out. A lot of people don't do that. People just come in, get their work, and they leave. No, me, I would come in early, sweep the place up. After my workout was over, I'd clean the place up because that's not their job to do. Their job is to help get us together. So let me help them by keeping their facility together. You know what I mean? So it's kind of ironic that all of that stuff it led to this point.
Right. So then you met Lorenzo, and he's an amazing human just in general. I mean, his story is absolutely awesome. And the fact that we have somebody of his knowledge base in the Canton area is absolutely insane, and nobody really knows about him.
Right. Except for if you've been in the sport, then it's
right.
like,
you know who that name is.
Yeah, it's like you're seeking God when you're trying to find this guy because he's that knowledgeable and he carries God with him that strong. He's just an amazing guy, like you said.
Right, right. So why give us a little bit of a background on Lorenzo and how that relationship started and who he is.
I first met Lorenzo when I was training with Q. We were supposed to have a fight in Pittsburgh, and right before we're getting ready to leave for Pittsburgh, he says, "Hey, I'm not going with you. My trainer did." And I'm like, "Why didn't you tell me before I got here?" It's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I got you a replacement." So this is maybe my third fight at the time, and I'm thinking, you're just going to send some guy, not tell me ahead of time or nothing, which at this point in time, I'm glad he didn't because I would have just decided not to come because I'm wanting to go to the fight with my trainer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he's like, don't worry about it. He's just like me. You won't miss a beat. Well, that guy just so happened to be Lorenzo Scott.
What a replacement.
Exactly. So my brother, he had the absolute best fight of his career, his amateur career. He fought this young kid who was like the pride of Pittsburgh. He was 17-0, and at the time, I think my brother was 3-3, and he beat him. I mean, this kid was on my brother like a tornado, and he prevailed. If it wasn't for the fact that Lorenzo was his corner man, there was no way he came out of that fight the way that he did. Mm-hmm. Me, it was about the same thing, but I was out of shape. I was coming off of being on workers' comp, had blown up in weight, and as soon as they released me, I was right back in there scheduling fights. You know what I mean? So I was nowhere near prepared for the fight, but it was the best I ever performed, even though I had nothing. I had nothing to give and offer that fight. But because of him, again, I wasn't knocked down. I wasn't hurt. In fact, I had the other guy more hurt than I was, and I probably only landed about 7 punches to his, I don't know how many, but.
Yeah, that kind of sucks when you start to lose count of how many times you've gotten hit.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't move. I had no legs. I literally was just standing in the middle of the ring, hoping he would come to me just so I could swing. And he's bouncing around me and all of this stuff. And mind you, I was fighting guys I shouldn't have been fighting.
Right.
This was my third fight, and it was this guy's 15th.
Nice.
So I was still a sub-novice class fighter, and this guy's an open class fighter. So I shouldn't have been fighting him in the first place. But I was hard to beat because of that will and the fact that I had Lorenzo to back me up. Because that was the first fight that I ever wanted to quit because I just had nothing left. I contemplating just dropping my hand and letting this guy hit me and falling just so the fight would be over with. But he wouldn't allow me to do that. So
he was able to take that
Yes.
will
yes.
and kind of impart it
Right.
on you in the ring.
Yes, the very first time I wanted to quit, he wouldn't allow me to. And after that, couldn't find him no more. Nobody knew where he was. I looked for him for maybe 2 or 3 years, me and my brother both, because when I got back with my trainer, Q, he's like, yeah, didn't I tell you he was just like me? And I'm like, yeah, he wasn't just like you. He was better than you. So that ended our relationship. He didn't appreciate that truth, but the truth is the truth. If somebody's better than me, then that's fine. And it's not more
Right.
so that Ren is better than him. He was better than him for me.
Right.
As
Right.
to
I
where
think
Q
that's a
could be
big
better.
thing for people is just,
Right.
especially as a trainer or a cornerman,
Right.
or whether or if you're in the business world and you have different employees kind of working with each other, being able to match people up that they may not be the best
Yeah.
employees or they may not be the best at whatever they're doing, but they're the best for that specific person.
Exactly.
As far as the way they communicate, how they motivate, and their values, how they're
Right.
trying to move stuff forward.
Right. And you've seen for yourself, I've sent people to other gyms countless times.
Right.
Whatever's going to be the best for you and your growth and your results, it doesn't have to be me. Long as you grow, I don't care where you grow at. You know what I mean? And a lot of people aren't like that. They want the business, they want the money, they want the notoriety that comes with it. And
Right.
that's not who I am. If
Yeah.
I don't improve you, then I failed. Period. So
Whether
if-
it's at your gym or it's at
Exactly.
another gym. Or,
exactly.
so you looked for Ren for what, 2 or 3 years, and then how did you end up coming across him again?
Well, there's a girl I was friends with since 7th grade. We've been friends for a long time, and we reconnected actually through Facebook. She eventually became my wife, but one night she was talking about how, she has like a boxing family or whatever, and she said her godfather's name is Lorenzo. And I
How
said, "Your
fast did that
trainer
light
is
bulb try to go
who?"
off? Yeah.
Who'd you just say?
Yeah.
She said Lorenzo King. I said, no. It's not Lorenzo King. It's Lorenzo Scott. She's like, you know what? Yeah. His last name is Scott. His wife's last name was King. I need his number right now. She's like, babe, it's 3:00 in the morning. I don't care. Give it to me right now. She gave me his number. I ended up actually running into his wife the next day at my now wife's parents' house and went to his gym, and that was that. It was almost like a spontaneous combustion. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times as a trainer, you don't really have anybody to just talk to.
Right.
You're usually the one doing the talking and telling other people what to do and all of that type of stuff. But nobody really ever asked the trainer how they're doing. How's your day?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of training, I asked him, how's he doing? I wasn't worried about myself anymore. He did his part. So, how you doing? Do you need any help around here? And he just looked befuddled when I asked him that. Like, this is new. No one's ever really done this before. And that's how it kicked off.
Nice. So did you fight under Ren for a certain period of time before you transitioned into trying to do training full time, or?
No, that one replacement fight is the only time I was able to fight for Ren. After that, I just became even more accident prone than what I already was. Like I said, when I was fighting, I never had a fight where I wasn't in a hospital before the fight. Not after the fight, before the fight, whether it was bronchitis, pneumonia, bacteria infection, sprained ankle. I even fought once with a torn Achilles, which was probably the dumbest decision
I
ever.
would say, holy cow.
But
man, I wrestled with a dislocated shoulder, but
right, yeah,
torn
Yep,
Achilles.
Same here.
Kind
And
of need that to walk, right?
right, yeah. But I didn't want to admit that it was a torn Achilles. I mean,
Okay.
right now I have a torn ACL, and you've seen me move. It doesn't look like I have one, but I do.
Right.
But I did that, and you keep getting hurt like that and sick all the time. It's kind of that sign like this part of your career is over.
Right.
So I left, boxing alone for a while, just focused on music, and boxing just kept calling me back.
I always try to tell people, and you've heard me talk about this before, where the pulling principle, where you feel like you're being, like you just said, like it kept calling you back.
Right.
And it's trying to find somewhere where all of your talents kind of come together.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you have to push yourself
Right.
to get there. You're being pulled in that direction. So it's a
Right.
lot easier to maintain motivation, maintain discipline for something like that,
Right.
than having to push yourself to get out of bed in the morning, to go do something that you don't feel like doing, to stay motivated at a job that you don't like. And there are times where you have to do that, to get by, right? To pay the bills, to make sure that your family's supported, to make sure that you're supported. But, if it keeps calling, maybe you should pick up the phone.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. And we know what that call is, and we know where it comes from, because I don't know how many times I made the prayer of, asking God to show me what it is that I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Everybody hits that point where they just feel like they've lost purpose. Like, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
You put me here for something. Can you show it to me? I'm 27 years old. What am I doing?
Right.
I've wasted 27 years of my life because I don't know what my angle is, So I knew what it was. I was ignoring what he was showing me. But as I got deeper into faith, as I talked to God more, there was no denying what it is he wanted me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being a child and going to a church, and there was a prophet there, and he looked at me and told me that one day I was going to be a minister. And he looked at my brother and told him that one day he's going to be a strong leader for his community and for his people. We both ran from that for a long time. As a kid, I'm like, pastor, not fun.
Right.
Not
right.
fun. Not at all. I can't kick it with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I want to do. So next thing you know, I'm in Bible college and boxing. And who would have thought that the sport I love would be my ministry years later?
Right. I was just going to say, I think that, you go through Bible college and stuff like that, but people think of a minister or a preacher or something like that it has to be inside of a church.
Right. Anywhere can be your pulpit.
Anywhere can be your pulpit. And I really think that, you walk into your gym and above the door it says put God first.
Right. Right.
So immediately people have that vibe. And I can't count the number of push-ups that I've done for cussing on accident. So for those of you that don't know, there's a rule at the Canton Boxing Gym. And if you use any vulgarity while Markees is trying to destroy your soul during a workout, you have to do 20 additional push-ups. So
Per word.
Per word.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you really got to watch.
Yeah. And that's, a lot of people don't understand that concept. Some appreciate it, some don't, just because they don't, some people don't want to abide by rules, or they're tired and they just want to make an excuse as to why they don't want to do these push-ups. But the reason being for that is, a lot of us, when we get upset, we let out a vulgarity.
Mm-hmm.
We respond the wrong way. We punch a car window or do something stupid when we're upset. So if you focus on not doing those things, you open up the window to accept more knowledge.
Right.
And face yourself a lot more. So by not hulking out and dropping an F-bomb, I can't do that now. Now I am forced to deal with these emotions up front right now, instead of the consequence of yelling the F-bomb, punching the wall, breaking my hand, and then while I'm in the ER saying, probably shouldn't have did that.
Right. Well, and it's just another piece of just discipline.
Right.
In the gym. Especially,
Right.
With boxing, you have to have that mental discipline where, you're going to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And you can't hulk out, because the minute that you start trying to throw punches from Thailand, you're going to get rocked.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
The not cussing is just one more layer of that discipline on top of everything else that you have to focus on.
Yeah.
To be a good fighter.
Right. It's great you hit that point, because a lot of people think of boxing as fighting, as if it's just barbarity and, this full-on offense, swinging away for your life.
Right,
That's
brawling.
not it. It's self-discipline. It's keeping ice in your veins and fire in your fist. You know what I mean? The
Ooh, I
calmer
like that.
person usually wins the fight. Usually. Not always. Sometimes somebody can rage out and land a good punch, and the other person just not able to beat that 10 count.
Well, yeah, you're only ever one good punch away from getting your crap rocked. So
especially the higher in weight you go, the
Right.
more closer you are to that.
Yeah.
But the higher percentages, the calmer person wins. I mean, even outside of boxing, look at Tom Brady in that Super Bowl against the Falcons. I mean, he was getting wrecked all game long. Everybody thought the game was over with. This guy's demeanor doesn't change whatsoever. Next thing you know, there's this crazy comeback, and he's the one holding the Lombardi Trophy. And the other team that was destroying him was looking like, what happened?
right.
That will is what happened. That calm is what happened. And a lot of us can't understand that.
Right. So, I mean, boxing, so how do you think that, because now I'm genuinely curious, right? So how do you think that boxing can be related to life in like the mental, physical, and like spiritual aspects? Because obviously the gym is very spiritual,
Yeah.
right? So you're focused on that developing point. And then you as a trainer, we've already kind of hit on it, say all the time that you're trying to make people the best versions of themselves.
Right.
Regardless of whether that's with you or outside of the gym or supporting people in their pursuits outside of what they're doing. But those three pillars are really important to developing a person. And in the poem that we read in the beginning here, it said, like, if you can hit all of these different points, then you can be a man. So do you look at boxing as a way to develop people, or do you try to develop people to be a good boxer, if that makes sense?
At first, I was looking to develop people into being better at their craft, you know, whether it's boxing, football, etc. It wasn't until someone that I was training, who was obviously sent to me by God to train, and it was him that caused me to train people for life, period. Because, again, like we said earlier, nobody ever asked a trainer how they're doing. Well, there was a older guy I was training, Mike Polnick, and he asked me how I was doing. And at this time, there was just a lot of wreckage in my personal life that I always masked and put behind me, because when I show up to that gym, it's no longer about me. It's about the individuals that come through the door.
Right.
So he decided to ask me how I was doing. You know, of course, I deflected as much as possible, because that's not what we're doing here. Well,
Right.
I had to remember how I gained a relationship that I had with Lorenzo. So I vented, told him what I was going through and how I couldn't beat it. And he kind of looked at me in confusion, like, what do you mean you can't beat it? I said, I can't. And he's like, I've never talked to anybody that knows boxing the way that you do, especially from a science standpoint. Everything somebody throws out there, you always have a parallel for it. And I'm like, yeah, but this is boxing. So he's like, yeah, so you know boxing in and out, right? Well, if you say I do, I do. I'm not going to say that. He says, well, you do. So why won't you box life instead of letting life box you? And that's another one that hit and stuck with me all this time. And I realized it. Boxing is life.
Right.
You sometimes you're on offense, sometimes you're on defense, sometimes you're counterpunching, which is a fusion of both, which is pretty much where you should be. Always ready. That's what a counterpuncher is. He's always ready for no matter what the situation is. And that's my natural trait, a counterpuncher. So I listened to what he said. I looked at life from a boxing standpoint, and I found so much more peace. I already had God. I already had that.
Right.
But I wasn't listening to what he was trying to tell me himself. So he used Mike to give me that parable, and been working that ever since.
Yeah, and Mike, Dr. Polnick for the Walsh University students, he's a super ethereal, I think is really the only way that I can kind of describe the way that he talks when he gets into those places.
Right.
Just all of the studying that he's done with philosophy and theology and ethics and everything else is just, he's really good at bringing out that one piece that you're missing.
Right.
To try to like put all of the puzzle pieces together. And I think that after that initial, there's been a huge difference between you from when I first got to the gym, which we'll get to that here in a second about how me and Markees actually met, but to now, just the way that you interact with people. Obviously, my mom trains at the gym. My sister trains at the gym. And watching you interact with everybody in there is whether you're an 8-year-old kid or you're a 45-year-old man, you interact with them at their level,
Right.
where they're at and where they need to go to be better at, to be able to box life.
Yeah.
I mean, is really what it comes down to. When people leave that gym, I know people, there's that fierce loyalty that's not necessarily to CBG. Like there's this fierce loyalty to Markees Watkins because you're transforming people. You're not making fighters.
Right.
But you just happen to be making fighters in the process.
Right.
So actually me and Markees met because I wrestled for like 13 years, pretty much since I could walk. I was in the wrestling mat. And I needed something. When I got to Walsh, I was super stressed out all the time because the nursing program here is super intense. And I needed something as a release between the Air National Guard, being pulled in that direction, trying to work, trying to go to nursing school and everything else. I really just needed to hit something without breaking my hand, right? So I ended up messaging Canton Boxing Gym on Facebook and got put in touch with Markees and showed up. And at that point, I think I was sitting between 220 and 230. I was right around that weight. And just started training regularly. I was in the gym probably 2-3 days a week.
Yeah.
But I didn't really think anything of it. At that point, I'm just going to box. This is a good stress reliever. I like the fact that the gym is Christian based. I like the trainer. So I'm going to try to bring some people in. And I just was doing it for fun at that point. And I remember there being a day where the Tuesday prior, because this happened on a Thursday, I'm pretty sure. The Tuesday before, you were talking to somebody else about fighting in the Golden Gloves that year. And then Tuesday night, Wednesday, I was thinking about it all day. And then Thursday, I came in, and I didn't even have to say anything. And you were like, all right, hey, so am I going to sign you up or what? Like, are you fighting? And I was like, how did you know that I was thinking? He was like, I saw you light up like a light bulb when I was talking to the other guy about fighting in the Golden Gloves. He was like, I know you want to do it. He was like, I can help you get there. And he was like, are you willing to get into the ring? And I was like, oh, man, I don't know. I really know if that's anything that I really wanted out of this. But then, I mean, the rest just kind of, it all just started going.
Just happened.
Yeah. So when you saw that, right? Because one thing that I really try to help people with is finding that potential, right? Because I believe that everybody has this potential, right? And you saw that. You was like, okay, there's this potential for this. How do I get that out of him, right? So what were you thinking? Because I've always been curious about what was going through your head at that point in time where you're like, hey, here's this kid that's in the military, he's in school and stuff like that. How am I going to get him from point A to point B?
Well, I guess I'll answer that question in sort of a parable. But when you box, everybody thinks it's all about your arms and throwing heavy punches. Like you had to have strong biceps or something to be able to throw a good punch. It has nothing to do with your arms. It has everything to do with your hips. Your arms are just a vessel, and your hips are the power source. So that's pretty much what I am. I'm pretty much the arms, and God is the hips. He's telling me what to do, and I'm just the vessel he's using to get it.
Okay.
I'm not doing anything special besides following the footsteps that he laid out for me. So that's how I knew that you were interested in boxing. Now, you lit up, and I seen that, but if I'm talking to a guy over here to the left, why am I looking at you to the right to see how you're responding to he and I's conversation?
Right.
You know what I mean? Everything just happens for that reason. And I received the message from God, and I'd follow the steps. So it's, like I said, it's nothing special that I'm doing. Well, I can't say it's nothing special because
you still have to be the vessel.
Yeah.
You still have to accept the power from the hips.
It takes strength to be a vessel.
Right.
And
because it may not
vessel.
be the path that you're thinking that you should be going down.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's actually kind of polar opposite. I can't count the number of times that I've been like, oh, I'm going to be going over here, and the next thing I know, I'm getting slapped over into the next direction.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, crap, I should have been going that way the whole time.
Right.
So we started training, right? I started going through fight camp, and then you linked me up with a bodybuilding buddy of yours.
Yeah.
Right. Goose.
Markees. Yeah.
Yeah. Other Markees, a.k.a. Goose.
Right.
And he hooked me up with this bodybuilding diet, and I actually cut from the time that we started to April for the Golden Gloves. I mean, I weighed 175 at weigh-ins.
What was it, 7 weeks?
Yeah, 7 or 8 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
I cut all the weight down. And that, I mean, that was probably, that journey was just intense, right? All the way through the fight camp, all the sparring, getting to spar Montel, going to train with Lorenzo, and sparring Johnny, who's now a pro fighter.
Right.
And all of these other things. I mean, you did everything in your power to kind of set me up for success. And so we get to, I mean, I was doing really well in spars, winning the majority of rounds in the spars. And we finally get to the point where we go up, we weigh in, and we're ready for the Golden Gloves. I'm wrapped up, I'm taped up, finals, we're up in Cleveland, and everything's about to go down. And then what happened?
Well, we get to the waiting by the scales to see if his opponent shows up, and he doesn't. There's
Yes, sir.
many different stories as to why the guy wasn't there. He was just a no-show. His trainer was there, and that was the only fighter that this trainer had this year. So he was just as upset as we were. But honestly, I think that he saw you at the initial weigh-in and said, nope.
Right.
Because you had a certain aura about you. I mean, everybody that encountered you, whether they liked you or not, because you were so driven there, people didn't know how to take you. Like, you know, what's this guy's deal? They didn't understand it. That's just how bad you wanted it.
Right.
Because they haven't seen that kind of fire either in a while or ever. So many, you know, fighters recognize fighters.
Right.
True ones.
I agree.
And even open fighters were measuring you at the weigh-in. Like, what's up with this guy? And
I also showed up to Cleveland in cowboy boots and
that's
with a
another
big
reason
belt buckle.
Right, it added to. You didn't try to dress down to try to fit in with the crowd.
Nope, I was just
were
unapologetically me.
Yep, and they respected it. And it takes, like you just said to me, it takes a strong person to be themselves.
Right.
Instead of trying to blend in, and you didn't do that.
Well, and I kind of took that from the gym too, because there was always just this vibe that, I mean, you don't want to be anybody but yourself.
Right.
Like, you are good enough as you are.
Right.
Like, we're going to get you better, and we're going to teach you things, and we're going to get you into the ring. We're going to teach you lessons about life, but you're okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're already a person. Like, you're a
Right.
human. You're already good.
Right.
Like-
You can't be a better version of yourself if you're trying to be a better version of me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I remember sitting there and watching you make laps, and I knew that something bad was about to go down. And you were just making laps, and you finally came up to me and you're like, hey, he didn't show up.
I don't even think I got a chance to get the words out.
Yeah, I don't even think you
I
had to
think
say
just looked
anything.
at me and,
Yeah.
you knew it, and that's when the tantrum began. I mean, I understand that tantrum. I mean, you worked your tail off for that. I've never, and this isn't a let down anybody else or shafting somebody else or anything like that, but I've never put more into any fighter than I did with you in that training camp. Because for the most part, it was just us. You were
Right.
always willing to put in that extra work. Even with having finals going on, I mean, you were still a straight A student with all of that training going on, putting relationships to the side, all of that stuff.
Right.
You know, living on a college campus where there's a lot of junk food around and not eating it because you're trying to cut weight to get to this goal.
Yeah, eating a cold piece of chicken and a sweet potato on the way to class.
Exactly. So that took a lot. You put in that work and that dedication. So I knew it was going to be difficult telling you that everything you just worked for, you're not going to be able to do it today.
Right.
And even though you won the Golden Gloves by walkover, you still did it because you did the work.
Right.
I mean, even if that guy would have showed up, he was so mentally defeated that he wouldn't have been able to perform anyway. So I'm not even going to say 9 times out of 10. There's 100% chance that this guy was going to get the brakes beat off of him, or the ref was going to call the fight anyway because he was just too shook and nervous to perform. As to
Right.
you, if I put the trophy on the other side of a cinder block wall and put that guy in front of it and said, you got to go through him and this wall to get that trophy, you probably would have ran through both in like 30 seconds because that's just where you were mentally that day.
Yeah, that day. Yeah, and you have those peaks and valleys, and I think that day was a really big day for just being in that zone. Right. So we're going to move past that and kind of get into the lesson behind that story, right? Because, I mean, right now it just kind of feels like I don't want people to think that we're just like fluffing me up as this awesome fighter person that went through this training camp, because obviously that was 2 years ago now.
Was it 2?
Was it 2? Is it 16 or 15?
That was 15.
Was it 15? So 3 years ago now. So that's 3 years ago. Obviously, I'm no longer in that type of shape, or I still can get to that place mentally, but the lesson really that was hard for me to learn, because I put that trophy in the back of my closet for a long time. And I mean, for a couple of weeks after that, I didn't come to the gym.
Right.
I mean, I was just down.
Yeah.
Right. It was super hard for me to deal with. And I think that just even outside of boxing, just in life in general, when people put so much effort into something, and this can be, relationships.
Yeah.
Right. The sports, business, any adventure that these people go on, that you put everything into, and then it doesn't happen.
Right.
Okay, so what do you do with that? Right. And so my first reaction was, I'm just going to hide it. I don't deserve that trophy. I didn't fight anybody. Yeah, I did the spars and I did the dye and I did all this other kind of stuff, but I didn't deserve that trophy. Why is it even in my hand?
Right.
And then what ended up happening, what I had to get to mentally was just accepting the fact that it was about the journey.
Right.
That I had gone through the process, that I had sacrificed all that stuff, that I had done what I had to do to get there. And that's what it was about. It was about the lessons that I learned from you. It was about breaking down, crying during a spar because I had unlocked a piece of myself that I hadn't unlocked in years. Right. We'll get to that here in a second, and then we'll probably kind of start wrapping things up. But the dynamic behind that is just, hey, you put in the work. Right. And that's what you try to get. That's part of what you try to do with people when you're telling people to box life. Yeah. That no matter what life throws at you, if you put in the work. And I said this in my commencement speech here at Walsh, where I'm like, sometimes life is going to beat you down and you'll feel as though you failed. And I said that specifically because you can feel as though you failed, but the only way that you're truly going to fail is if you don't learn from it. You don't accept the fact that you went on a journey to get there and you are now a different person than when you started that journey.
Yeah.
Because I am 110% a different person because I went through that fight camp. And that you have the ability to dictate what you're going to do moving forward.
Right.
That's, if people would like, they can go back and listen to episode 1 with Dean Kaler, and that's what happened with him. He could have decided when he was shot at Kent State that his life was over.
Right.
But he went on to become a teacher, ran 2 marathons in a wheelchair, is going to be trying to run his 3rd at 70 years old.
Nice.
So it is completely up to you as a person, mentally, physically, spiritually, to trust in God, trust where he's going to send you, and dictate your future.
Right.
Moving forward.
Right.
So, I don't know. So where can people find information on Canton Boxing Gym?
We try to keep it as simple as possible. Even if you just Google Canton Boxing Gym or Boxing Gym in general, we'll pop up. We don't have a website or anything, but, we use our Facebook page as pretty much the main catalyst to helping people find us. Click on the About tab, all of our hours are right there. And we get some people that don't really like our hours per se, but they're not realizing that I'm doing this on a volunteer basis.
Right.
I don't make money at the Canton Boxing Gym. I make my money doing my job. So in order for us to keep this going, I'm going to need to work this job so that way I can take care of myself and my family, and then come in, do the gym, work the gym so that way other people can have a chance, because there are people that are getting hit by life and don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So whether they want to fight or not, just come on in. We're not going to force you to fight. If you're curious about it, we'll show you the ropes, put you through a training camp, see if it's what you want to do. If you decide to keep it going, cool. If you're like, you know what, I'm going to just keep working out. This fighting thing isn't for me. That's fine too. We're not going to force anything on anybody. We just want you to come in, respect the rules, and do the work. And that's what it is, or they can, just call me, which even if you go to the Facebook page, hit the call button, it's coming directly to me anyway. So we're really easy to find.
Right. And one thing, I mean, my personal plug, I guess, for Canton Boxing Gym is that they're big on unlocking pieces of you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the whole mentality, is to make you the best version of yourself. And
right.
To kind of wrap everything up, I said we were going to return to the point where I started crying in the gym. And that was, I'm harnessed a lot of anger with a lot of stuff that I had gone through in high school and a lot of other things. And I tried to suppress it for a really, really long time, because whenever it takes a lot to get me from one level to the next level. But once I hit something, I see red, it flashes, and then I borderline black out. Right. And when I get into, I used to, at this point, I know how to control it.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're a person that's struggling with something like that there's this internal battle that you have that's going on and you don't know how to do it 110%, I think that hitting a heavy bag, getting into a gym with a positive environment, like Canton Boxing Gym has, is a great place for you to finally let that side of you out, even if you're afraid of it, and learn how to control it.
Yeah.
Because that was a piece. I mean, I was in a spar getting hit, and I was hitting the other guy. And then at one point, he hit me really hard and then dropped his hands and was basically egging me on to just go at him.
He just let you hit him for 30 seconds?
Yeah, to just go at it, right? And I got to the point where I felt myself get to that point where I wanted to just drop my gloves and hit a high crotch and just start wrestling and just doing stuff that was totally illegal.
Right.
And I backed off. And I just started crying, because I was like, I haven't felt that in a long time.
Right.
Right. But what did you come over and tell me and work on with me after that point that was able to get, how do you get people to harness that energy and point it in a positive direction?
Honestly, I have no idea what I said to you. Like I said earlier, most of the time I'm being spoke through, and I have no idea what I said even 5 minutes after I said it. But
right.
So you more than likely remember better than I do. I knew only thing I knew is that it had nothing to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
It had everything to do with you. So whatever it was, the emotion, whatever it was inside of you that you were refusing to deal with, it was basically telling you this is the time and the chance for you to deal with me.
Right.
And you did.
Yeah. And so what I remember was you came up and you were basically like, hey, it's okay that you're feeling this, right? I'm not gonna rip on you for breaking down in a spar. He was like, that feeling that you have right now, he was like, you can either let it out all at once and it explodes like this, or he was like, you can get hit, you can harness it, use that energy to fight back. You have to box it.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just all out brawl with those emotions, because a lot of times those emotions will take over.
Right.
You have to learn that emotional discipline slowly but surely. And so after that, in spars, I would get hit and I would feel myself get there, and I would let myself feel it.
Yep.
Instead of trying to suppress it. Because I think that suppressing it for such a long time and then letting it all come out at once is what caused that situation to happen.
Right.
So I would get hit. And even in life now, when something bad happens, I let myself feel that darkness. I let myself feel that emotion. But then I detach and I look at it and I'm like, okay, why am I feeling this? Where can I point this energy that it's going to be productive and not destructive? And that's something that I learned, 110% from fighting, whether it was boxing or wrestling or anything. But that specific situation is a time where I can point to in my life there was a transition made mentally. And it's led to a whole bunch of different avenues of just being more disciplined in emotion and everything else with situations.
You were definitely a different person from that day forward. And there was all kind of tests coming your way after that point, and you went through them all like a marathon.
Right.
And that's what took you to where you were when you won a Golden Gloves. Whether you actually got to step in and throw a punch or not, you faced all of this stuff and you actually faced it. You didn't push it to the side, say, I'm not dealing with this stuff today. Once you hit that moment, you tackled every giant that came your way. And that's what did it. And you're literally still doing that till this day.
Right.
And that's just a great thing to see.
Yeah. Okay, so if you want to learn about how to tackle your own giants, like he said, you can look up Canton Boxing Gym on Facebook. There's just Google Boxing Gym in the Canton area on Google to find all of their information. And if you want to call and speak to Markees, you can click the call button on the Facebook page, and that's a direct line to Markees. And then we look forward to possibly seeing you at the gym. With that, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Well, you could always call my phone number, which is 330-313-4883. And also, for anybody out there facing anything, wanting to box or do anything, embrace failure. Failure is the best learning tool we have in life. No one achieved anything by just waking up and it happened. It took a lot of trial and error to get things that we all love and use today, whether it's the internet, our smartphones, cereal, whatever. Embrace the failure and learn from it. You can be a winner and still lose if you didn't learn from anything. So just keep that in mind.